Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in Jew. A very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. Today we have John Campea trolling dceu fans over the Snyder Cup. We have many articles saying that the whole plot of the Joker movie has been leaked, and of course I've seen this film and I know the plot for this film, so we can discuss that as well. And we can quickly discuss the future of the DCEU. So let me read you a post from John Campea. From the man who said Mary Poppins would whip Aquaman's butt comes this. Retweet Snyder Cup. He literally said on stage with an audience, it's up to WB to finish it and release it. If Snyder had a truly completed cut, he'd just get online and say, yeah, there is a fully finished musical score that affects completed version of Justice League. So why hasn't he? Well, John, let me tell you, basically, again, what you're doing, you're editing things together to forward your narrative. Zack Snyder hasn't said, no, he's never said there's a scored, fully finished Justice League movie. He said it's almost done. It's almost done. And for him to almost do it, he needs the say-so of Warner Brothers. Then he can finish the whole thing and they can release it together as a studio and a creative. So I don't understand what you're saying. Now, I can't find his other post where he says it's just an assembly cut. It is not. It's an almost finished movie that was never allowed to be released. But no, it probably needs some editing. It probably needs CG. It probably needs a score. But these are semantics, right? You know, this is like eating a tomato and having a debate whether a tomato is a fruit or a vegetable. This is silly talk. The cut's there. It needs a little bit more finishing up. But there's no point doing anything to it until the man knows he can release it. So, again, Mr. Campea, you're talking absolute rot. I wonder if your subscriber count is down. Maybe you're trying to create a kind of controversial situation so more people... You're an attention seeker. We know you're an attention seeker, but you're also from the original Collider. The original Collider hate DC, hate Warner Brothers, and are Disney shills. We know what you are. We know who you are. And this is why you said that Mary Poppins would kick Aquaman's butt. So, John, whether the cut is completely 100% finished or not is irrelevant. There's a cut there to be nearly finished, which wouldn't cost much money to be finished. And if that was done, it could be released. So we here are still fighting to release the Snyder Cut. We don't care what you say, John. We don't. You know nothing about film. You know nothing. You've never made a film before. You've never released a mainstream film before. You have no sources. You have no contacts. You're just a Disney shill who got lucky, who got onto Collider, then went into business for himself. Good luck to you. I like the John Campea show. I actually think sometimes you speak really measured and you're a good guy. But when you start kicking the fandom that I admire and I respect, we're fighting for something that's real. A man was taken off a project for all the wrong reasons because he's a unique filmmaker and an individual. This is why the mainstream audience hate him, because he's not a clone, because he doesn't follow the mantra of Feige and Disney and the MCU. He created Batman v Superman, Man of Steel. They were beautiful, unique individual films. They may not be for everyone, and I respect that. Not everyone has to like what I like or what we like. But at the end of the day, there's the way of talking. And this, my friend, this debate you're having, whether it's finished or not, is pointless and irrelevant. And that is all I've got to say about that. Right, so basically, the alleged plot to the Joker has leaked online. Now, I will tell you this. I read it. And I can confirm pretty much I'm not going to... Look, this isn't a place for spoilers. I've seen the film. when we've all seen the film, we can discuss it. I don't think it's right for me to discuss certain elements of these reports. I could read the article out to you, but I'm not going to. It's not fair. Because even if I say spoilers, people are tempted by spoilers, and you're just going to ruin the film for yourself. So I will say that this leaked plot synopsis for the Joker movie is pretty much on song. Now, instead of reading headlines and saying, blah, Joker is connected to this character or crap like that, read the whole article. I think if you read the whole article, if you want to, you will be pleased with where this movie is going to go. So there. I'm buzzed to see the finished article. The finished article of the movie. When I see it in theatres, I think this is going to be a brilliant film, and everyone is going to be raving about Mr. Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix. So bring that on. So Warner Brothers have been talking about the future of the DCEU, responding to questions about Warner Brothers not being in Hall H. Don't forget, Warner Brothers and DC have still got a big presence at this year's Comic-Con. There's just no Hall H panel. They're not ready to make big announcements about slates. Now, but apparently what they did say was that 2020 will be a big year for Warner Brothers and the DCEU, and they'll be back in Hall H, and this is official. They'll be back in Hall H in 2020. I expect big, and look, I don't think Hall H is the place for big announcements anymore. I don't. I know they announced Batman v Superman in Hall H. I know that. It won't happen again. That won't happen again. Or whatever announcements we're going to get, and they're going to be big shock announcements, we're going to get before San Diego Comic-Con 2020. And I think they'll expand on those announcements in San Diego Hall H, in 2020. So before then, I expect an announcement about Superman. I expect loads of announcements. And I do want some clarification about this Steven Spielberg DC movie. If, Warner Brothers do need to start saying whether they're still doing things or they're not. Because the past has been, we're doing this, we're not going to do this anymore, but we're not going to tell you we're not doing it anymore, we're just moving on. So that's ridiculous. When I look at the DCEU, when I look at all their films, I think, apart from Justice League, you can sit there and watch them. And if you just look away during certain moments of Justice League, you can still kind of enjoy it. But the whole point is, and the point of releasing the Snyder Cut is forgetting about the theatrical cut. That's it. That's what you do. That's what you do. If you get the Snyder Cut, you can forget about what that theatrical cut was. They put this film together. It didn't work. Also, what they've been saying from Warner Brothers, that the DCEU is totally director-driven. But what the guy said as well was that obviously we want to trust these directors, and we do. And we want to make our projects direct to run, a freedom of creativity. But you also need great directors. But also what he said was you need great producers. And I think the DCEU in Walter Hamada and a few others there now, from the New Line Cinema production studio, right? I think I saw it with Shazam. They made a really good, cohesive film. And I'm talking about the film, not the box office. People are so overly focused on box office these days. That is a really well-marketed film, right? And it's a good film. And it's the same with Aquaman. We talk about John Campea and him saying that Mary Poppins was going to whip Aquaman's butt. Now that's really interesting to me because Aquaman was the next film after Justice League, which was deemed to be a very disappointing box office return for Warner Brothers and the DCEU. So for their next film to be so good and to make so much money and to be the highest grossing DCEU movie was an amazing thing. And it really just hits home how unpredictable the box office is. But because sometimes the thing is, this man, James Wan, I always knew I was going to get a great Aquaman movie. This man, James Wan's record is amazing, not just in beautiful content, but in terms of box office. His box office record is amazing. So I'm really, really happy that he was involved and that him and Walter Hamada worked really closely to iron out the kinks that maybe the mainstream audience wouldn't have liked. And that's what they did. They worked together to iron out the kinks. They knew that Aquaman had to be a good film for the mainstream audience. There's some critics who don't like Aquaman, but that doesn't matter. You see, the whole thing with the DCEU, where they say, oh, the DCEU is a critical failure, basically. Well, the point is that studios don't really care what critics say. It's about if they're making the money. And are the mainstream audience taking any notice of those critics? The problem with early DCEU is, Warner Brothers wanted Man of Steel to make $1 billion. They wanted Batman v Superman to make well over $1 billion. And really, even Wonder Woman should have made around $1 billion because she is an awesome, epic character. But because the mainstream audience, not all of them, trusted the franchise, they all didn't come out. But Wonder Woman would have made well over $1 billion if everyone had been happy. And I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about the mainstream audience. And I think that's what they need to fix. Because I think what's happened now with cinema is people only go to films and franchises they trust. The mainstream audience trusts the MCU. They trust the John Wick franchise. And really, they're the only franchises they trust now, to a point. We've just seen what's happened with X-Men, the Dark Phoenix, right? People don't trust that franchise. Even though it's the last film, people know it wasn't going to be a great final movie. For me, Logan should have been the final movie from this franchise, and it should have been dead after that. It was a great ending. I don't know why they persevered in making more, but that's down to them. Obviously, Feige, Marvel Studios, and Disney will sort that franchise out now. We all know that. So it's all about trust now. This is why Endgame made so much money, because the mainstream audience trust that franchise. And with consumer content, the consumer has to trust the content you're putting out. And I think this is what they're trying to do with the DCEU now. So I'm very confident about the future. I am still fighting for the Snyder Cut. You're still fighting for the Snyder Cut. But I'm also very excited about the future of the DC world of film. So what do you think about today's video? Comment about all the issues we spoke about. What do you think about what John Campea said? There's not really much to think. The man's just a shill, isn't he? What do you think about the leaked plot of the Joker movie? Have you read the articles? What do you think? Comment down below. And what do you think about the future of this franchise? Do you think, like I do, that Wonder Woman 1984 will change the face of this franchise? Well, there's only one way to find out. Next summer in cinemas. I'll see you again later.